British Prime Minister Theresa May has called off a crucial Brexit vote. Parliamentarians were scheduled to cast ballots tomorrow on whether to approve her Brexit deal. ENCA's UK correspondent Ollie Barrett joining us from London live for an update now. Ollie, a very good afternoon to you. So we were hearing from the likes of The Guardian that Theresa May would today deliver an official message announcing the postponement of this vote on her Brexit deal. Has it indeed happened?
No, we will hear from Theresa May within the next hour in the House of Commons. She's to give a statement to British lawmakers in which we certainly do expect that she will say that Tuesday's vote is not going to happen. Pretty humiliating for her to, at this late stage, have to admit that she was not going to win that vote. More so, she was going to lose it by a pretty heavy margin. She will say, we think, that she is listening to MPs' concerns, and a lot of those concerns relate to the backstop, which is that solution to keep the border between Northern Ireland, which is part of the UK, and Ireland open once Britain leaves the European Union, if a free trade deal with the EU hasn't been agreed when the transition period runs out. And many MPs in Theresa May's own party and many other MPs as well have been deeply concerned about the backstop solution that has been reached, and so we expect Theresa May to say that on that issue, on the issue of the backstop, she is sending her negotiators back to Brussels to try and get some firmer guarantees that either the backstop will never be used, or that if Britain does enter into that backstop situation, it can come out of it without having to get the approval of the other EU member states. Now, all of that is going to be very difficult to do because Brussels, Ireland, other member states are saying, look, we have a deal, we negotiated a deal over 18 months, you agreed to it, and we are not going to reopen negotiations. But certainly Theresa May is hoping to get some concessions from Brussels that will mean that she can bring more MPs along with her.
It's quite striking, isn't it, Ollie, that going into this process, Theresa May was very confident. She was sure that she'd be able to get support for her Brexit deal, but every week there seems to be a spanner in the works, and now we're hearing that she is indeed going to concede defeat and send those negotiators back to Brussels. But given the irritation that will be felt there and the irritation she faces at home, again, this question comes up all the time when we speak. How much longer can Theresa May hold on to her position as Prime Minister then?
I mean, I think the one thing Theresa May has in her favour at the moment is that there isn't really a clear candidate to take over as leader of the Conservative Party, and of course therefore as Prime Minister. There isn't one candidate within the party that would satisfy both wings, the Brexiteer wing on the right hand side of the Conservative Party and the softer wing, the Remainer wing of MPs who perhaps wanted to stay in the European Union. There isn't one candidate that appears to be uniting the party at the moment, and so that essentially keeps Theresa May in her job for the time being. But it could well be the case that in the coming days enough MPs are disgruntled enough about the latest twists and turns in the Brexit process to put in those letters calling for a vote of no confidence in her leadership. We may well see that as soon as this week, a leadership challenge to Theresa May. So this is certainly an existential crisis for her in terms of her leadership, and of course the opposition Labour Party is certainly considering as well putting in a vote of confidence at some point in the not too distant future in the government. Now, Theresa May might win both of those challenges, but certainly it gives you a sense of just how precarious the situation she finds herself in.
In more breaking news from the UK, earlier today we heard the European Court saying that Britain was indeed allowed to pull out of the Brexit process should it not be satisfied with the way it's going. But Brexit is a race against time. We've got a March 2019 deadline here. How much time does Theresa May have to seal a useful or credible deal?
Not much at all. She really needed to have it done by now. It is perhaps possible for her to head into January and look at some kind of new vote around then if she can win concessions from Brussels. But the feeling is that she'd like to do it before then if she can, before the Christmas holiday comes around for the UK Parliament. It's, I think, also worth just stepping back and taking the view that a lot of the troubles that Theresa May now has relate to that calling of an election last year in which she wanted to cement a really strong majority in the House of Commons for her Conservative Party. If she had that strong majority, her life would be much, much easier now than it currently is, because she, of course, lost her majority in that election. She relies on the support of the DUP party of Northern Ireland, and that just means that those Brexiteers in her party who are concerned about the type of Brexit she's trying to bring home, they feel much more emboldened, much more able to try and set the direction of travel here. So she's really under attack from all sides on the deal that she reached with Brussels, and as she sends her negotiators back to try and get some kind of concession on the wording perhaps, or legal guarantees around that backstop issue, she is, the European Union knows that she's incredibly weak domestically. That could play both ways, because the EU will certainly feel that it wants to get this deal done, and if it can give her something to allow her to get this deal through Parliament, then perhaps Brussels will think that that is worth doing. But I don't think we're going to see a wholesale opening up of negotiations again. Certainly the European Union believes that the withdrawal agreement is done, and that if there is to be any changes made here, it will be language around the future relationship, perhaps some legal assurances. But Theresa May get nothing, and if she does get nothing, you can guarantee that that leadership challenge is coming around the corner.
The Prime Minister, Ali, faces a lot of opposition, as you've said, but does Theresa May have any allies at all at this point?
She has some allies in Cabinet. There are some MPs who were preparing to back her in Tuesday's vote. It should also be said there are another chunk of MPs who were going to vote against this deal, but if she can win some changes, might be tempted to go along with her and get this done. There is certainly a part of the electorate as well which feels that Brexit has been talked about now for too long, has been dominating public discourse for too long, and that actually a deal does need to be reached so that Britain can move on and start thinking about some of its other priorities around the health service, around crime, around the economy, around poverty, all of those things that Brexit has been slightly pushing towards the edges of public debate and political discourse. But it's still incredibly hard to see how Theresa May gets to a point where she can have the House of Commons swing behind her. At the moment, the real problem for Brexit as a principle, as an idea, is that there doesn't really appear to be a majority in the House of Commons for any particular type of Brexit, any particular way of doing Brexit. And that's why that ruling in the European Court of Justice earlier, which suggested that Britain could stop the Brexit process without having to ask other EU member states for permission, could end up being very important indeed in the future.
Ollie Barrett, live for us in London. No doubt we'll be speaking to you much more over the next hours.